Okay. Welcome to episode 4 of Rusty the Ratwagon Restoration. In this episode, we're running diagnostics over the course of a few weeks to identify why the engine isn't running. Up to this point, we suspect issues pertain to either timing, carburetor settings, electrical wiring errors, or fuel delivery. Join us in ruling out different possibilities to get the engine running again. So we are doing a bit of rewiring in the engine today. So the regulator at the back there was previously wired in, but we switched out the dynamo in the engine for an alternator. Now initially when this was fitted, we couldn't determine whether or not this actual alternator had a regulator built into it or not. So I was advised, whether that was correct or not, that it didn't matter if this regulator was still attached. So we wired it in. Having said that, we are having a lot of issues getting the engine running. It'll start and then it'll just sort of splutter out. And one of the things we noticed was that this particular wiring loom here had melted. And that is actually symptomatic of there being a surge of power coming from this and basically having this regulator, because it's not regulating, or it's messing up the flow of electric through the engine. I'm not an electrician, so I couldn't tell you the exact reason why, but yeah, essentially what I am now doing is wiring out the regulator. So we have a blue cable, which you probably can't see, which is this little one here, coming out the back. And we have this sort of main wiring loom as well coming from the front, which goes to our battery terminal. And from the battery terminal as well, we also have this red wire which comes to here. Okay, now the wiring will not actually reach from the battery directly to the alternator because the cable is too short. I can't show you now, but basically it doesn't. I've measured and it won't work. So what I now need to do is, I have just fitted one of the little female attachments onto the end of this cable, put a bit of heat shrink on it, and then this cable, which was previously the bit that was wired into the regulator, well, this end was on the alternator, this end went to the regulator, is now going to be rewired to fit these. Okay, so the idea being that the red cable will go on the top of the alternator, the green cable will go to the connection at the back, and then in terms of these two wires, this red one here is going to have the spade or the male attachment fit into there, and the green cable there is also going to have the same connector, and that will connect to the blue wire at the back over there. Okay, so we've got the two spade ends on now. Unfortunately, that's the only heat shrink I could find to cover it. The whole engine is going to be rewired, so this is a bit of a temporary thing just to check if the regulator is what is causing the engine to not start. So what I'm going to do now is wire this into the van, and then we can give them a quick turnover and see if it makes any difference at all. The first thing we're going to do is attach the red cable to positive on the alternator there, and then we're going to take what was the green is now the blue onto the back there and put it on the negative, And we are going to attach the red spade to the red cable in, and then finally it will be, I'm not sure if you can see it, the blue cable is here. Okay, you can see there I've done the blue to the blue. The only thing we have to do now is put our terminal back on and give it a boost because this battery is dead, and turn them over. Your smoothie's just fallen off the roof. Is that you? Are you doing anything?
I'm doing that with the throttle.
Yeah.
Because I was just continuously pumping the throttle and filling the carb with fuel. I don't think that it's getting fuel.
You think it needs the fuel filter?
I think it needs fuel pump.
Yeah, sorry.
Which we have one, if you want to have a go at wiring it.
You want to give it another go? Okay, so bypassing the regulator didn't completely fix the problem. I mean, it fired up, as you'll have seen, but it didn't stay running. So when we got the engine initially, it had another fuel pump, a secondary fuel pump sort of over there, and bypassed this fuel pump here. Now, because the fuel pump was built into the system, we cabled it, piped it as it said to do. However, it sounds very much like it's not getting fuel through, because when the ignition is pulled on there and we're literally pumping the fuel into the engine, it'll fire. However, as soon as you let off, it stops. So what we are now going to do is we are going to wire back in a secondary fuel pump, and hopefully that will work. I don't know. Anyway, so what I need to do is I need to remove this previously homemade loom, because this connector here needs to have a third wire wired into it, and that's going to go to the external fuel pump, and then the black cable from the external fuel pump will be attached to this bolt here with one of the circular attachments. So I'll go and do that, and we'll see if that works. So instead of wiring the red one into the yellow and black here, like we were talking about previously, what I found in my connectors is that I actually have one of these little doodabbers. So that way I can just press onto there. So what we did was we wired the black and yellow into the spade one as before, and then it's got this little doolally on there, and that is going to attach to the red via this here. So this will just pop onto the end, and the other end of the wire is here, and that is going to go onto the fuel pump. Red there. Now in terms of the black wiring, I did exactly the same connector, one of those, which was just there, and then I did the extender cable, and it goes to a loop that's going to fit on the ignition coil. Ooh, there, okay. Now the reason that I have actually just heat shrink wrapped that lot is so that we don't get any short circuits. Now the van is actually going to get completely rewired, so I don't want to make these too permanent for now, because these two in particular will more than likely come off. I mean, well, I don't know. We'll see how the wiring goes and what comes with the wiring ring, but potentially I'll need to use these two connectors again, and there's not much wire here, so I don't really want to go any shorter. This will get wired back onto the auto choke and the ignition coil, and yeah, that should, in theory, when we've done some repiping of the fuel lines, be ready to give it a go. So let's give it a go. Okay, so how this should now all go in. We have our loom here. This will connect on down here. So connect it on there. Okay, that is that one there. Make sure it's bent enough so that we can get the part on it. The yellow is going to go on there on the ignition coil, and then the black needs to go on the back of here and attach onto the side here, like that. You can do it when I've got two hands, and then we take this bolt off. Oh, this is going to be completely rewired eventually. Tighten that up, but that's basically that loom now back in where it should be. So from here, the fuel pump will attach there on those two, and then this fuel line will go into this fuel line, which is currently running into this fuel pump, is going to be unattached and will run into the fuel pump here, and then the bottom pipe, this one here, that pipe there, is going to run into the top of the fuel pump there. In terms of the wiring, the red wire off the fuel pump will be attaching onto this one here, and then the black we will remove. This is already finger loose because I've already loosened it. Remove that, and the black will attach onto there. Okay, so we'll be leaving this as redundant. That will mean it'll work, maybe, hopefully. So, quick sit rep. Yesterday, wired in the fuel pump, fired it up, and the top of the fuel pump on there just started puthering out fuel. So it wasn't brand new. We bought it from the swap shop meet, and yeah, it obviously doesn't work, it's very faulty. So that is being taken out. Now we do have an old one, which is the one that was originally on it here, but doesn't have a bracket. Now we have ordered a new one that will arrive later today, but we're kind of impatient and just want to know if this is the issue. It sounded like it when we tried to fire it up last night, so we're going to wire this one in, and if it works when the new one comes in, it should just be a case of switching out, and hopefully the van will then work, in theory. Right, try and keep the revs on for like 5 to 10 seconds. Yeah, because as soon as it drops, it falls, it literally turns off.
The carburetor set.
Well, admittedly, the battery is...
Well, the battery wouldn't control the engine.
No, it won't. No, it won't. But I'm just saying the battery is really bad. No, that's what I mean.
Hold it. It doesn't. Yeah.
It drops.
Doesn't hold it.
No. I'll give it one more go round.
At this point, we're starting to think that it might not just be the fueling that's the issue, so we start exploring other possibilities such as a vacuum leak and carburetor settings.
So, a new fuel pump is there.
Which we're not sure that we needed because we don't think that was the problem.
No,
the problem was the gasket was blown up here and...
Round the back, the gasket had blown, so basically it was having major backfire, but we couldn't tell that until it was running properly.
I think there's nothing, now that we know that it was the blown gasket which was the issue, probably the fuel pump works here, but
to be honest, we didn't get it running to the point where it was backfiring so that we could identify the gasket until such a time that, you know...
It's not backfiring now.
It's not backfiring.
It sounds like it's timed okay, it's running, it just needs the
mixture screws messing around.
We've got the idle and the mixture screw to play with.
Yeah.
I think it's close, isn't it?
Very close. Very, very close.
So we've had something of a saga with the engine up until this point. If you've seen any of the previous videos, you'll see that it was taken out and we dropped it out, put it in the garage and essentially reconditioned it, or gave it a bit of a spruce up and a spring clean. So we changed pretty much everything that's ancillary. We converted it from the dynamo to an alternator. Everything sort of on the outside of the engine has been changed or replaced, so that means the distributor, the coil, fuel pump, there's a new carb on there now, sparks, spark harness. We did the valve clearances while we were at it. New pulley, new fan, new shroud for the fan. Yeah, so changed quite a lot, and put it back together, and it never ran properly, which is often going to be the case when you're changing lots of things and you don't really know what you're changing. If you do one thing at a time, it's easy to diagnose what the issue is, but if you do everything at once, If it doesn't work, then you're at a bit of a more of a tricky situation, because then you've got multiple variables and trying to figure out what you've done wrong. But so the first thing that happened is we started it up and it ran not very well, but it ran, and a load of smoke came out because we burnt out the wires. And what we've learned since then is that when you replace the dynamo with the alternator, you have to bypass the regulator, because this has got the regulator built in. A bit moist on there. Is that just condensation? Yeah. So these have got the built-in regulator, so we bypassed that. It doesn't idle. It runs, but it doesn't idle. Initially it was running poorly, and the first thing we thought straight away is the timing is off. So since played around with the timing, and now I'm pretty sure that it's timed correctly, because when it does run, it sounds great. There's no misfiring, nice smooth running engine, no smoke comes out the back. It's spot on really. It just won't hold the idle, that's the issue. So then we thought maybe it's the carburetor, because old dirty carb, I took it apart and changed the settings and changed seals, and I thought perhaps I've done something wrong. So this was actually at the body shop at the time. So then we were like, okay, we recommended let's just replace the carburetor with a brand new carburetor, because it'll come from the factory with the settings as it should be. That didn't really change the issue. It was still, you could rev it up and it would bog, and at this point I'm still playing with the timing and changing the timing, and it's just not even close to idling. And then I was thinking, well, actually obviously it's got spark because the engine's running, it's got compression, it's getting air, but it just seems like you put your foot down and then it runs out of steam and it just dies. So we're thinking, oh, maybe it's fuel. So then we decided to bypass the fuel pump, which is sort of built in down here, and we put the old fuel pump back on, which is like the external fuel pump. That started leaking, so we bought a new one. So now we've got a new fuel pump bolted onto the side. I can see that there's plenty of juice coming through when you push the pedal. It's just still, it's not idling. So then people are saying like 99% of the time it's because you're not getting, or you're losing vacuum, you're losing your vacuum pressure because it's not sealed properly here, or you're losing your vacuum somewhere. And I looked actually, so the carburetor was quite loose where it was bolted onto the intake manifold, and I could see when I looked closely that the gasket was completely blown out. And when I was playing with the timing during that process, it was backfiring at various times, and when it was running poorly, and literally blowing flames out the seal between the carburetor and the intake manifold. So there was an obvious loss of pressure there. Replaced it with a new gasket, it was just a paper gasket actually, but then I used some gasket seal on there as well, and I think I've got a pretty nice fit. That's nice, tightly down. Started up and it did run. Initially it ran better than it had, and it's definitely running the best that it has done, but it's still something not quite right with it. I mean, obviously it doesn't idle is essentially what's the problem, so it still doesn't idle. But when you're pumping the pedal, it runs, and it runs well. It's just it won't idle. We've reset the carburetor to the factory settings, or like all the recommended settings, but it just feels to me like nothing's coming through to keep it idling. There's obviously like you've got the fuel shooting for the accelerator, but it just, when you let off the accelerator, there's nothing. So people have also been saying, well, it's probably your idle jet is blocked. And I thought, well, it's a new carburetor, would that be the issue? But then quite possibly in the midst of like changing fuel pumps and fuel filters, and the fuel tank's quite dirty and rusty inside, there's every chance that the idle jet has got blocked at some point. And I've also heard people saying that from the factory, don't trust that it's clean, you need to clean it out. So this is where we're at now. I've got some carb cleaner. Doesn't look like, can I reach? Might be able to get the idle screw off without removing the carb, but not sure. It doesn't look very accessible, so probably... Oh, I can get a spanner on there, can't I? I've got some carb cleaner. I've got a new gasket coming in the post anyway. We'll try and blast some carb cleaner into the idle jet, and we'll see if that fixes it. I'm going to run it now and let you see how it runs, if it'll start up its own battery, and then we'll blast out the idle jet and see if that makes a difference. But I'm determined to get this running now. This would be so much easier if the carb was off the vehicle. I'm about to drop this now. I'm just unscrewing the pilot jet with my fingers, so I really don't want to drop it. Right. There we go. It looks kind of dirty. Let's have a go. A bit of spritz with the old Right, let's try and get back in now. That'll be easier said than done. Alright. Just going back in. Going back in. If this doesn't work, then the carb's going to have to come off. I'll have to clean all the jets. I'm going to have to reseal it with a new gasket. I've got one on the way. Let's give it a go. Right, well, that gives you an idea of how it's running. So, you know, when it runs, it sounds okay, but it's just obviously it's not staying running. So, I don't know. Very tempted to just take the carb off and give it a thorough cleaning, clean all the jets, but. Fuel pump's not working. Why? Dodgy fuel pump, look at that. Is that the reason? Working. That is an idling van. Okay. Well, it's the best it's gone so far. It's a start. Okay, that's something to play with now. At least you can tune something that idles. I think that's the problem with the fuel pump there, the connection. That it's not connected properly, and actually I think once the engine's running, yeah, the shaking of the engine is causing this. Yeah, maybe. This connection is sketchy. See, now it's in the on position, the fuel pump should be running. See, I wonder if that can be soldered on.
Once we'd ascertained that it was a loose wiring connection to the fuel pump, I took the loom off and resoldered the wires so that none of them were loose. Good girl, Rusty! She lives! She lives!
Working.
We have an engine! And it runs! Don't mess with anything. Okay. Why have you taken the air filter off?
We're not using it, are we?
Are we not? Or is it that one? Okay. Okay, we're going to try and move her.
I can't remember where first gear is.
The same way it is on every car. Please don't crash. We still don't know how good the brakes are. You in first? You what? Brakes are seized. That doesn't surprise me. You're going to have to go in first. Do you need me to give it a push? It's not even trying to move, Chris.
I know, I'm not in gear.
Oh. That's it. Give it. Yes! She moves! It doesn't matter, she's moving. Oh, Rusty, you're such a good little man. Yay. Okay, go back. Stop. Stop, go back. Back we go.
shit. We want to get rid of all of that.
Okay, go back. Stop. Stop, go back.
Wait, we're pouring oil out of the side. I forgot about that. I haven't, we might not have a lot, I don't know how much oil we're losing, but I didn't do the rocker cover. The gasket never turned up this week, did it?
No.
Yeah, it's pouring oil out of that rocker cover there, so
Okay, well,
it needs...
but at least it's fucking running.
You just swore on YouTube.
Yeah! It's running.
It's looking a bit smoky, but I think it's because the oil that's dripping onto the exhaust, isn't it? Alright, that's good. It works.
I can smell burning plastic.
I think it's... well, I don't know. It's definitely going to be heating up the oil which is on the... Oh look, you need to... Actually, that's the intake manifold. That's not going to get hot, is it? No, that shouldn't get hot.
True.
Have a look down there, you can see how much is dripped out. Oh, it doesn't pick up on the camera.
Oh yeah, oh god, yeah.
It's like all over the...
Shit, yeah,
all
there's
over
a
the
filter on
exhaust.
the exhaust.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's why I've ordered the gasket. It didn't know.